It's week 7, Packer fans. I'm Nariah Chapek, host of Supporting the Packers podcast. Thank you for being here. Thank you for checking out this video. I am here to break down the upcoming matchup against the Oakland Raiders and the Green Bay Packers, give you my final thoughts, some of my opinions, things to watch out for, keys to victory, and of course, that lovely game prediction. So without further ado, it is time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. So the Green Bay Packers improved to 5-1 after beating the Detroit Lions on Monday night with a whopping score of 23-22. Now, I did have a live Q&A on Tuesday night. It was about 44 minutes or so, filled with technical difficulties because you can't do a live show without technical difficulties. So I went into more details if you'd like to, specifically about that Detroit Lions game. So if you want to check out that one, the video, I swear, if you get past like the first 3 or 4 minutes, it doesn't freeze the entire time. But some of the biggest takeaways for me to kind of, condense my takeaways from that game. The first one is that we have a very good and very capable backfield going on out there in Green Bay. So the mixture of Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones has proven to be that, that we can run the ball. It is a weird thing to have in Green Bay, specifically for the Green Bay Packers. Jones had a rough game in general. Yes, he fumbled the ball. He missed a wide open touchdown, but Jamal Williams, he came out of left field. Williams averaged 7.4 yards per carry and had 104 yards rushing. Yes, he didn't have a touchdown, but he could have had a touchdown. He had one of the most, tremendous heads up plays that I've ever seen out of a football game, as far as just running right up to that 2-yard line, sitting on his tushy and calling it good and letting that play clock run down. So eventually Mason Crosby could go on and kick the game and field goal. So I love what both these guys bring to the table. They both have very distinctive and different play styles. You have Aaron Jones, who's more of that outside zone guy that can catch it for screen passes. Not that Jamal Williams can't, but he can go up the seam. He's a much faster slasher, dasher type of a running back. And then you have Jamal Williams, who can just kind of go right through, up the gut, and just hit people and gain hard-fought yards. And that's what I love. It's nice that we can put these guys in at any moment throughout the game. They both have different play styles, and they both will take pressures off of Aaron Rodgers and open up that play action, which we so desperately need with our depleted wide receiving group. So second thing that I took away is that the Packers overcame a multitude of adversity. So they were down early, 13-0. Lost the turnover differential in the game 0-3, and Allison and MVS both left the game at some point or the other with injuries, and they were able to overcome that. Yes, they were still able to gut out a victory, and the headlines from the rest of the media is that the officiating wasn't the greatest. They may have played a role in that, but they held Detroit to 5 field goals, which is very awesome. And then they were able to run out the last 6 minutes and 46 seconds of the game and kick that game-winning field goal. This showed, grit. It showed trust, resilience. It showed character within that Packers organization. Matt LaFleur said pretty much every one of those words that I just said afterwards in the press conference. And it's true. It's something that we were not able to accomplish against Philadelphia when we found ourselves in a hole, and they were able to kind of gut out that victory. And a win is a win in the NFL. My third and final thing when it comes to my takeaways is that Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers. Absolutely. So Rodgers, throughout the entire game, he played remarkable. His passes were accurate. He was able to extend plays, and I'll touch on this later, but Rodgers just showed us all once again that he's able to make the receivers around him better, and this proved absolutely critical in their victory on Monday night, and it's going to prove even more critical as we approach that Sunday matchup. So this team has evolved in such a way from the beginning of the season. Rodgers doesn't have to be the guy to carry the team on his back. The running backs that we have that have kind of emerged, even though they're not new to the team, but now that they're in that Matt LaFleur offense, just having these running backs go out there and put out the games that they have, Rodgers doesn't have to be that guy. And but when you need him to, he will be that guy. Aaron Rodgers will be that guy if you need him to. Fourth quarter, you're down by 11? No, what? It was 13. Oh, what the hell was the score? They were down in the fourth quarter. Rodgers brought them back. Absolutely awesome victory. So let's move on to our lovely injury report. So 16 Packers appeared on yesterday's Thursday's injury report. Adams, once again, has not practiced. It looks like he is targeting that Kansas City Chiefs game on Sunday Night Football next week as that possible return date, so it doesn't seem like he is going to be out there once again against the Oakland Raiders on Sunday. But furthermore, Allison and Marquez Valdez-Scantling both did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday, which leaves us 4 healthy wide receivers on that roster. You have Kumaro, you have Lazard, you have Shepard, who had an awful game, but don't cut him. He will bounce back. Just give him some time. Let him give him an opportunity to redeem himself. And then, of course, we went out and signed free agent Ryan Grant, who actually spent the offseason in Oakland, and that might be part of the reason why the Packers brought him in. I'm not one into these conspiracy theories. I don't think Ryan Grant will be a long-term solution for the Packers on that wide receiving depth chart, but he's at least a body that we can throw out there, maybe get some play action if we don't get Allison back, if we don't get MVS back, which could very well prove to be a problem that we face. As I mentioned, Rodgers will make his receivers better, and Lazard seems like the number 1 wide receiving option coming out of Monday night's game. I talked about this in my Q&A, but Rodgers said put 13 in, and then Lazard was, when Lazard came into the game, he said, I want to run this route, throw me the ball, I'm going to catch it. So he has kind of some of those intangibles that you want out of these rookie or young receivers. And if our top 3 all miss game time on Sunday, I expect Lazard to get the bulk of the throws because he has trust in Rodgers, or Rodgers has trust in him, and then Rodgers also has trust in Kumaro, but we just haven't been able to get Kumaro going. Outside of some of those injuries, Kenny Clark, Jimmy Graham, Tramon Williams, Robert Tonyan, and Darnell Savage, they round out the remaining players that did not practice on Thursday. However, Clark and Williams looked like they were given rest, and I think they were both fine on Wednesday, so I think this could be precautionary. I don't see them missing game time action. But if I had to pick the most impactful player that I want to come back off of this injured list or injury list, I'd actually choose Savage over Adams, and that's a little bit of a surprise, I'm sure, for many of you. So with the combination of our running backs and Rodgers, I think our offense will continue to find ways to go out there and put points up on the board. However, I just really love what Savage brings to that defense and some of the swagger, along with just his athletic play style and his speed. I do think that if Savage is in the game on Monday night against Detroit Lions, this is all also happenstance or theories as well, but I don't think Savage gets burnt on that flea flicker. I think he then is there to cover, but he also allows both Alexander and King to play more of a press, kind of a press coverage to get right up on their wide receivers because they know that they have Savage over the top that will be there as kind of a safety blanket. And so I would love to see Savage make his way back. I don't know if he'll be back. I would love to see him at least in a limited capacity practice on Friday, but I just don't see it happen. I think he'll be back also for that Kansas City game. At least I pray that he's back for that Kansas City game. Our bye week is still a month away, so if we can still weather the storm, we have 4 more games, including the Raiders game. If we can weather the storm, the ups and downs against the the up and down Raiders, the injured Patrick Mahomes Kansas City team, which was a shocker from last night's game, an underperforming Chargers team, and hopefully a Cam Newton Panthers team. If we can, weather the storm against those guys, our final stretch should shape up really nice for us coming out of that bye week. But we got a lot of football left ahead of us, and I think we should start talking about the Packers and the Raiders matchup, shall we? So Sunday will mark the 14th game in NFL history between the Packers and Raiders. Isn't that an absolutely crazy stat? For the 100 years of the NFL, the Packers and Raiders have only played 13 times. This will be the 14th matchup, and their first game took place in Super Bowl II back in 1968. And their conferences only line up every 4 years or so. So that's why we don't have a whole lot of these games against the Oakland Raiders. Sunday starts a stretch of 3 straight games against the AFC West opponents or teams and finishes off their 4 home game, their run of 4 home games in the last 5 weeks. Since 2002, the Packers have gone 14-3 against the AFC West, and their 82.4% winning percentage ranks number 1 in the NFL over that span. Green Bay leads the overall series against the Raiders, 8 wins to 5 losses, and 1987 was the last time that the Oakland Raiders beat Green Bay. That's right, I turned 31 on Monday, and the Raiders have not beat the Packers in my lifetime. So if you feel old, Cool. While going 7-0 against Oakland since 1990, Green Bay won 4 of those games by at least 28 points, and the 7-game streak they have against Oakland right now is tied for Green Bay's longest active streak against an opponent. The other team that they have beaten so many consistent times outside of the Raiders is the Chargers, and we just happen to be playing them 2 weeks from now. So lastly, Green Bay has scored 30-plus points in each of the last 4 contests against the Raiders, which ties the longest streak by any NFL team in Oakland versus Oakland since 2003. So a lot of statistics right there. I think what I really want you to take away from it is that we have dominated the Oakland Raiders for the last 31 years, and that's something that not a whole lot of teams can say about any opponent that they face throughout 30 years, is that they've been undefeated and have been able to, overcome or just continually beat down another opponent. So Oakland visits Lambeau Field on Sunday with a 3-2 record. They are in second place in the AFC West and are also coming off of a bye week, just like Detroit was coming off of their bye week when they faced Green Bay on Monday night. Their 3 victories of the season come against the Broncos, the Colts, and the Bears, where they won by 8 points, 7 points, and 3 points respectively. However, their 2 losses have come at the hands of the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 2 and the Vikings in Week 3, where they lost by 18 points and they lost by 20 points respectively. So they are riding on a 2-game win streak after a surprising victory 2 weeks ago against Chicago over there in London. I think that London thing possibly could have had something to do with that victory. Or the Bears still suck. It's really kind of either one or the other. It's up in the air right now. Only time will tell, quite frankly. But Oakland is another one of those opponents that is very hard to read. They have a young team, and subsequently, because they have a young team, they will have their ebbs and flows and ups and downs throughout the season. But they do have a winning record. Had Kansas City lost on Thursday night to the Denver Broncos, Oakland would be playing the Green Bay Packers and if they win, they would have had first place in the AFC West. So they're in the thick of things as far as that AFC West conference is concerned, and that too is a surprise. Just the fact that Kansas City has 2 losses is a bit shocking. Outside of that, if you have watched Hard Knocks on HBO throughout the last couple months or when it aired back in August, it's obvious that Oakland is building a winning culture over there in California, and that's just been something that's been absent from that franchise for a number of years. So they're doing the right things. You sign Gruden to a 10-year, $100 million contract. You trade away all of your players to get draft picks, and they're definitely in a rebuilding phase. But Derek Carr, he enters Week 7 with a 96.7 passer rating. He has a 73.3 completion percentage, and both of those are higher than the bad man. I'm not going to steal the Stephen A. Smith line, but both of those are ahead of Aaron Rodgers. So he has thrown for 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns. He does have 3 interceptions, but he's probably off to one of the best starts that he's had in his career ever since he was brought into the NFL back in 2014. Even without Antonio Brown, who I'm sure Oakland fans, you just love hearing that name associated with your franchise, Carr has weapons in that Oakland passing game, but specifically he has 2 guys from my research that he has leaned on through these first 5 games of this very early season. So tight end Darren Waller is an absolute beast. So just looking at his statistics, looking at some of his highlights, he's caught 88% of the passes thrown in his direction, and he has 359 yards, averaging 9.7 yards of reception. He has amazingly not found himself in the end zone with all those receiving yards, but he will definitely be a priority for Green Bay and that defense on Sunday. Outside of that, you look at wide receiver Tyrell Williams. On the other hand, he's had no problem finding the end zone. Through 4 games, Williams has corralled 4 touchdowns off of 17 catches, has 216 yards receiving, and is averaging a respectable 12.7 yards per reception. So luckily for Green Bay, hopefully for Green Bay, Williams is struggling with a foot injury. He did not participate or play against Chicago, even though they still managed to win and beat Chicago. And it also has prevented him from practicing weeks. So if he does end up playing, I anticipate that Alexander will have, sole responsibility of him throughout the game and hopefully keep it on lockdown. But that is a big if. It's one of their weapons on that offensive passing game, and it's very possible that they could be out there with a tight end and then some wide receivers that just haven't really shown a whole lot for that Raiders passing game. That being said, outside of the passing game, it's running back Josh Jacobs that will be the true challenge for Green Bay on Sunday. In his last game against Chicago, Jacobs rushed for 123 yards on 26 attempts, and he did have 2 touchdowns against the Bears, and that is a Bears defense that is really good at stopping the run. For the season, Jacobs has accumulated 430 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns. He's averaging 4.9 yards per carry. It's tied for 10th in the league at 4.9 yards per carry, and it is tied with Mark Ingram and Christian McCaffrey, and I would probably go out on a limb and say those 2 guys are very good running backs. So he's having a great season. I think a lot that has to contribute to the success of Oakland and their running game is that their run blocking ranks 3rd in the league, and their pass blocking is not too far behind at number 7 overall in the league. So they got an outstanding offensive line. It's been able to do a lot of good things for them. Oakland has ran the ball. They ran the ball 55% of the time against Chicago, and subsequently they also won the time of possession against Chicago by nearly 10 minutes. So they have weapons. They have weapons, I think, in the run game. I think if they can get Tyrell Williams out there and playing in the passing game, that would be something that the Packers have to be mindful of. And like I said, Derek Carr is not a bad quarterback by any means. On the defensive side of the ball, though, Oakland has not been as strong. Their overall defense is ranked number 19th overall through 6 weeks. The Raiders' pass defense, which ranks 26th, has really struggled while playing man-free or cover one blitz man-to-man defense. Opposing quarterback ratings are currently sitting at 136.21 when they target their cornerbacks, who are LaMarcus Joyner and Carl Joseph. Though surprisingly, even though they've struggled in this cover one and man-to-man defense, they have only ran 30 passing plays this year in cover 2 or in a zone defense. So if they do decide to play more zone, I think Aaron Rodgers will find ways to pick apart that defense, whether it's short and accurate throws across all over the field. But if they decide to stick with that man-on-man defense, I think Aaron Rodgers will also find ways to torch them. So with that being said, Oakland's run defense ranks 6th in the league, holding LaShawn McCoy to 23 yards, Marlon Mack to 39 yards, and David Montgomery to 25 yards. Only Dalvin Cook, he's the only running back that has been able to rush over 100 yards against the Oakland Raiders. And with all of our injuries to wide receiver, and I kind of look at our strength being that running back or that running game that we have, it's going to be their strength at stopping the run that could cause problems for that Packers offense to get going. But I think it's time to talk about my keys to victory. So my keys to victory, I'm going to try and keep short and sweet because I'm finding that they're becoming a little bit redundant, but I'm going to sneak in a little bit of new ideas here and there. So number 1 is find success in that running game. So as I mentioned earlier, Green Bay has a great 1-2 punch in their backfield, and I'm not saying it will be easy, but it will be crucial or critical for Green Bay to find success when running the ball. Over the last 2 weeks, Green Bay has turned around their rush game. It wasn't anything stellar throughout that first couple games of the NFL or the 2019 season, but over the last 2 weeks, they have put up 272 yards on the ground, which is very respectable. And I'm sure Aaron Jones is chopping at the bit to overcome his poor performance that he had on Monday night, where he had the fumble, where he had that wide open touchdown that just bounced off of his fingers. So I'm expecting him to have a bounce back game and definitely want to have the ball fed to him on Sunday. Injuries have completely decimated the Packers wide receiving group, and although I do think Rodgers will find success against Oakland and their poor passing defense, if Green Bay can attack Oakland at their strength and get a running game going and kind of throw their vaunted run defense off guard, they really can pull away in this game. I think if they can get consistent 4 or 5 yards per carry and keep Oakland on their heels, it will control the time of possession, which absolutely destroyed Chicago when they played Oakland 2 weeks ago, and they can pull away in this game. Even with Rodgers and those very young receivers, get that running game going, and that will only help benefit what we have for wide receivers in that passing game. Key to victory number 2, shut down running back Josh Jacobs. Now, this is no easy feat, and yes, this game will be, in my opinion, an old-fashioned battle of the running backs, because we're going to be looking for Green Bay to get their run game going, and I'm sure Oakland is going to be looking to get their run game going against what has been known as a struggling Packers run defense. This is a surprise because, quite frankly, you have Rodgers and Carr, who are very respectable quarterbacks. Obviously, the GOAT on one hand, and then Derek Carr. They're both starting quarterbacks, but I do think this will be a running back battle. After Green Bay's Week 4 loss to Philadelphia, it seemed as though our run defense would be the demise of our vaunted defense. But since then, Green Bay has held Ezekiel Elliott to 62 yards, which is his second worst game so far this year. And last week they held Kerryon Johnson to 34 yards, which was his worst game of the year. In fact, Green Bay has only allowed a total of 119 rushing yards over the last 2 weeks. So, like I said, with Tyrell Williams questionable heading into Sunday, Carr will be left with only his tight end Waller as his only proven weapon. Of course, like Green Bay, they will have to have wide receivers that step up and have a game for them. But therefore, I think the majority of Oakland's workload will fall on Jacobs' shoulders. And even if Savage isn't healthy on Sunday's game, Carr has only thrown 250 or hasn't thrown 250 passing yards over the last 4 weeks. And I do believe that our defense will be more than capable of stopping whatever Oakland can do in the passing game. So another strong performance against the run should all but stall Oakland's offensive game plan. It will obviously allow Zadarius and Preston Smith to then focus on rushing from the edges. That puts pressure on the quarterback. That causes him to get the ball out early. And that should cause the Packers to start to get the needle pointed in the right direction as far as that turnover differential, because we found ourselves in a very nasty hole on Monday night. My third and final key to victory is to avoid more injuries. So despite our last 3 decades of success against the Raiders and our 5-1 record coming in to this game, the Packers have a pretty banged up football team, I think we can all agree on. And you're going to be facing a very hungry Oakland Raiders team that is trying to keep pace with the Kansas City Chiefs, but also just wants to come into Lambeau, prove that they can beat a team with a really good record. And we simply can't afford to have any more injuries throughout this football game. Outside of the risk of literally having no wide receivers to play if we do have any more injuries, next week we have a huge game against Kansas City. It's followed by another road trip to Los Angeles, and we will need all hands on deck for those games. For me, this game, it potentially has that upset vibe written all over it. However, if Green Bay can walk off the field on Sunday with the same amount of people that walked onto the field on Sunday, we should be able to hold off this surging Oakland Raiders team and be healthy for our upcoming games ahead. Guys, it's time for the game prediction. Are you ready? So there are a lot of people out there making predictions that this should be a blowout victory for the Green Bay Packers, but I think there are far too many variables heading into Sunday's matchup, and this will be a lot closer game than people think. So Green Bay's defense has held opponents this season to only 19.2 points per game, and their offense, on the other hand, has been able to average 23.6 points per game. So I see this game ending in a very close game. I see Green Bay 20, Oakland Raiders 17. Once again, I don't think it will be a pretty victory by any means, but a win is a win in the NFL. Green Bay should advance themselves to 6-1 in the NFC, and dare I say, be in sole possession of second place in the NFC. Yes, I'll take Baltimore over Seattle, and I will take Chicago over New Orleans, but God may have mercy on the Washington Redskins, because the San Francisco 49ers are coming to town, and it's definitely not going to be pretty by any stretch of the imagination. So thanks for watching, guys. Thank you for checking out this video. If you haven't, like the video, subscribe to the video. Kickoff is at noon on Sunday in beautiful Lambeau Field, Central Standard Time, of course, because that is where the state of Wisconsin is located. I will be live again on Tuesday, 9 p.m. Central. Come in, chat. I will hope to not have any technical difficulties this next time around. But until next time, I will see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.